and sisters who were also a part of NCC. And I joined in my high school itself, and I've completed all my A, B, and C certificates. So as I was part of my NCC, even in my schooling, so there was always an aspiration to be a part of the Republic Day parade, especially in Rajpath, to march on Rajpath, because apart from armed forces, it is the only set of people, I can say, National Cadet Corps and the NSS team, they get to actually march on Rajpath exactly on Republic Day. But that was a very, very huge task to actually accomplish. And I took a challenge to do it on my 12th only because, there are like two ways to go about it. As I always say, I look out for, solutions, how I can, solve my problems. My problem was when I was a good student, more than average, I can say. I knew that even if I put in my best efforts, getting into a engineering college with a free seat was very very difficult with the competition that we used to have. So my only point was, why not utilize also the NCC quota which is there. So this is just a frank opinion from my end. If there is an option, why not go for it? If you have that potential, if you think you have that conviction to go and achieve it, why not? So this actually started as an aspiration, but as I went through into the process, starting from July, where our college starts in June, the process of selection started in July. By the time we were in October, November, we had actually attended multiple camps and never stepped into college. And when I see a lot of people who've been putting their efforts to accomplish the same achievement for so many years, this was my first year and my first attempt, but people were there trying for the same thing for multiple years because that was something like a holy grail to them. So when I saw that, it was not any just an aspiration for me. This became like a goal to achieve. That no matter what, I'll give my 120%, but I need to achieve it. And luckily, and with all my efforts, I was able to get through. And in December, we went to Delhi, and we trained again for 1 month. And there also there is a selection process for people to get selected to march on Rajpath. Out of all the states, they select 144, 12 into 12 contingent. So there also, I got selected and I was lucky enough to march there. And then once again, very lucky to salute to Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam.
So how did your experience, preparing for the Republic Day, how did that help you in your growth as a trekker? You started trekking in 2008. So tell us about your initial years in trekking.
So yeah, so initial days trekking, I was exposed only through NCC again. So because as a part of our routine, so we used to go for hikes every month. So that used to be a very small hike in and around Bangalore. But that actually, got into me as a hobby, you can say. And then I started exploring the actual Western Ghats. So when I started going with some other groups, and after 2-3 years, I was a part of non-profit organization. I joined them as a trek lead and started taking people to the known routes that we actually explore. So here I want to share my experience over the past 15 years, how actually the Western Ghats trekking has actually changed, and also trekking as a hobby or as a passion or as a community has changed. So way back in 2006 or 2007 when we used to trek, we used to go by local transport, the local buses and the local jeeps and everything. We used to figure out all those things, and we always used to have maps and magnetic compass with us as an exit route. So we never used to have any Google Maps or GPS devices or anything like that. And also we used to camp at the peak. So when I say we used to camp at the peak, not exactly tent, we used to carry that 15 by 15 tarpaulin sheets, that foam sheets as a mat for us, and we used to keep our luggage bag as a pillow for us. So just that, we used to find a higher ground, but we used to camp there itself. And that was the beginning stage, where only like adventurers and explorers, people who are not comfortable with, taking that, risk a little bit, they wouldn't even join or think of, going for a trek. So that's why that was a very close, very small knitted, close knitted kind of a community there. Coming back to 2010, 11 and 12ish times, what happened was, there was an access to trekking camps, like, camp tents actually. So what happened there was the camping scenario entirely changed. So people were no more, staying in a foam sheet, open air or anything. So they started taking tents. And also on the map side, GPS devices came into picture, and we started carrying walkie-talkies, and we started exploring deeper routes and unexplored routes in the Western Ghats. That was really inspiring because that 4 to 5 years, we almost explored the most unexplored places in the Western Ghats. Now coming back to 15, 16 kind of year, what happened was there were a lot of issues in these forest areas. One thing was, the knowledge, the accessibility, and people got to know about all these routes. So there were a lot of influx of people into these areas. So what happened? One thing was, illegal activities that started on the campsites, and also on the other side, there were a lot of lightning strikes which happened at the kind of high peaks, like 1,800, 1,900 meters kind of peak. So this actually made the government of Karnataka and the Ministry of Tourism to ban these camping sites. So since 2014 or 15, if I'm not wrong, 2015 I guess, since then none of us have been allowed to stay or do a camping at the peaks. You can do the camping at the base camps or base camp villages, but not in the trekking route or the trekking peaks. So now this opened up the entire market for your local homestays, local resorts, all this. So now slightly it has changed, and more and more people are interested and want to explore these kind of areas because of the comfort they get and also the accessibility. This is how the trekking has changed over the last 15 years, as of I've seen with my experience.
Got it. So how does trekking in the mountains near Bangalore, how does that differ from trekking in the Himalayas? I understand you can have shorter trips in. So how has that impacted the culture of trekking in Bangalore and in Karnataka?
I'll give you a simple example of if you want to start something. Right? I'll take an example of running. So when you want to start running, so if your aim is to be a marathoner, like running a marathon, consider that as climbing a 5,000 or 6,000 meter kind of a Himalayan peak. So for that, you start doing that initial 1 or 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers kind of a slow jog. So that you can consider as a small hikes of 1 day kind of a trek in and around Bangalore, which is 50, 60 kilometers away. So you travel to that place, hike for 6 to 8 kilometers, come back on the same day. So these are that kind of a thing. So once you go to Western Ghats, you have trekking routes starting from 8 to 10 kilometers to 25, 30 kilometers as well. So again, it depends on number of days and how you want to do it. What is your capability and capacity to complete this entire trekking trail. So considering all these things, you can make it a 1 day or a 2 day kind of a trek. Okay. So what happens is a training regime that you can consider as a half marathon kind of a thing. So where you can extend your training regime to make sure that you are capable to run 21 or 21 odd kilometers. So once you are enabled here, then you can go to Himalayas, like for 3,000, 3,500 kind of meter kind of a peak, where you will actually get trained to run like 30, 35 kilometers, which is absolutely the right amount of training that is required to be in the first marathon. This is how all these trekking routes, including the small hikes of 1 day, 2 day, and then multiple day low altitude kind of treks, helps you to actually achieve the higher altitude treks in the Himalayas.
So how did you prepare for your very, very first Himalayan trek, which was the Everest Base Camp trek? I mean, from trekking to the mountain range with up till 2,000 meters, you are going to a trek that reaches up to 5,000 plus meters. So tell us about how you prepared for EBC in 2012. So yeah.
Right. So it was almost like 5-6 years into trekking. It was almost 5-6 years, and everyone was asking me the same thing, like when are you going to do your Himalayan trek? So it was there in my mind, but I never thought even myself that I'll go for the Everest Base Camp. But when I was scouting for which is the route that I need to do, this struck me, like I wanted to always see. Of course, it's like every trekker or a mountaineer's dream to be on the Everest, and very lucky people actually will be able to do that. But given the circumstances, of course, I couldn't have done the climb to Everest. And what is the nearest and the easiest way? Not easiest, at least the accessible way to reach or see Everest, in your naked eye. That was Everest Base Camp. So that was done. Okay, we have to do it. of course, at that point of time, it was more of an adrenaline rush, and it was not like we had a lot of information on AMS or high altitude sickness or the difficulty that we will encounter during the entire trek route of 12 to 14 days or anything like that. But we started actually planning it for almost 6 months before our departure. And the best part was, me being a trek lead at that point of time, I thought, I should go unguided. So Nepal, if you see, all the trekking routes has two possible ways to actually go for these treks. That is, one is your non-guided and another one is guided. Guided is any which is you go with any other company or a tour operator that operates in that particular area, and you join with them. Non-guided is like you will have no guide support. You will have to manage your entire porter, your stay, everything on your own. So I planned the same thing for 8 of us, everyone moving from Bangalore. So we planned everything 6 months prior. Every month, whenever we used to meet, whenever we used to plan, we got to know about a lot of challenges. Like the flight that we had to book, we had to book it very much earlier, so that we can block that slot, and how to actually take this TIMS card, which is a Trekker Information Management System card that you need to buy in Nepal. And of course, by the time the departure was nearing, we also understood about the AMS, like what are the necessary tablets or the medications that we need to carry, how we need to counter it, by doing the acclimatization days, which was very good learning, because we learned all these hazards and the problems that we could face in that particular Himalayan trek well before even we went there. And it was a very good learning, because those things, whatever I have learned in that entire due process, right, it is followed even till date. Even if you come with me for a Himalayan trek, even if you are a Everester, or even if you have done 6,000 meters plus, when you come for a trek, even for a 3,000 meter, you have to go for 1 day acclimatization. So that is a ground rule. So nobody, can actually skip it. They have to go through it. So that is a strict rule that I created, and it's still followed. And that is what also helped us to actually scale Everest Base Camp, and also the mighty Kalapathar forest, Everest Base Campus, which was a very nice thing. And luckily, no casualties. Everyone safe, well and good. We came back as well. So that was my first Himalayan trek.
Yeah, so I agree totally. Acclimatization is the single biggest limiting factor, and it's very important for any trekker to really respect the impact of the environment. So so tell us about your growth as a trekker over the years. I mean, you've consistently been trekking for over a decade, even while you were building your own startup, even while working in a corporate job. I mean, so how did you manage trekking, and how did you grow as a trekker over these years?
As I told you, trekking, has been changing every 5 years. The way people look at it as a hobby or as an activity, that also has changed. The perception about earlier what used to feel, or even till date, there's a perception that trekking is only for people who are fit and who actually have an interest towards it. Not exactly. Like people who travel, they also like to go for small hikes, right? People want to trek. But the only apprehension what they have is, when you go for a proper trek, what they feel is, they might not get a proper accommodation to stay, or maybe they might not get proper washrooms. So these are the apprehensions that people had. Now, slowly, as I told you, that phase moved on, right? When it came to homestays and resorts, right now, it is accessible. People know that, even if you are going for a small hike, if you have to travel a little bit ahead, like, 30, 40 kilometers, you will get a homestay or a place where you can comfortably stay, right? So this has changed. And one more learning that I have seen is that, when I see the first time trekkers, right, I feel very happy. Like, I like to take them, and, I like to explain them, how being in nature helps them, how being in nature actually motivates your, aspirations, and how it builds confidence within you, how the teamwork helps, everything.
Right. So tell us now about how you transitioned, how you started running. I mean, you were trekking for over 5 years, but what caused you to start running, and how have you grown as a runner?
It's like, we are actually the same alumni. So it is because of IIM Lucknow only. As of now, as Rommel is busy writing an exam, it was because of IIML, because 3 years down my career, I thought of taking up I am Lucknow's executive program in business management, which was for working professionals. And when I took it up, I actually didn't know my classes were exactly on Monday 6 to 9. Right after my work, it was on 6 to 9 every Monday. But the trickiest part was every Friday they used to give us a project and we had to submit it by Monday morning. So basically, my weekends, which was actually dedicated to my trekking, actually got cut down. So that point of time, I got introduced to running. This was again in 2012 end, like 2013 Jan, I guess. So one of my friend who was very enthusiast about running, he introduced me to the first running group in Bangalore, which was Nike Running Club. I guess there are like 100 plus running groups right now in India, like in Bangalore. But that was the only running group that at that point of time in 2013. So that is how I got my interest and I slowly started, when I went for a run for the first time, I was not able to run even for 200 meters. There's a 200 meters circuit. I was not able to do that also. But yeah, slowly with the training and everything, 2013 May, I ran my first 10 kilometers, 10K run. And now this got me as an addiction now because I never got to go out for treks and this was the only thing that I could do. And I always used to feel that, running it is like only for 1 hour, like in 10 kilometers, 1 hour it is done. So I can actually do more. So this aspiration of doing more and, that bug of doing more, actually it ended me up, doing my first marathon in December itself. So same year, 2013. And I also went ahead of doing another two marathons in next two coming months. One was in Mumbai, SCMM, and February that was in Auroville. So 3 months I finished one half and three full marathons. Luckily, nothing happened, but yeah, see, I could say I could give this benefit like I was much younger and I was much fit and I was also like that adrenaline rush is always there. That keeps on pushing you, and also the knowledge again like injury and all these things they were never there in our head. But however, speaking about that, when I spoke to seasoned runners, they said whatever you've done, it is actually very surprising, but don't push it further. Now you need to train. Like if your body is able to do that, now you train yourself and then achieve more. So then I slowed down and then I started doing running as my normal routine. And once I got back to trekking with running as my new hobby, trekking seemed to be kind of easier for me because my cardiovascular muscles and my breathing patterns were entirely changed, and it was much easier for me to do the same kind of trek route in a very easier way.
Got it. So how do you maintain your fitness routine amidst the current lockdown-like situation in the country? Are you still able to follow up on your training?
Lockdown is the most easiest way, right? You would have a lot of time at home, so you can absolutely take care of it. But what I did was, since the lockdown started, I kept on. I always wanted to attempt this. I wanted to run every day, continuously till whatever time I could do. So actually, 24th I started running, and for 75 days I ran 5 kilometers every day. So
Indoors?
I almost completed. Yeah, indoors. I
Okay.
have a treadmill at home, so I ran out there and I finished almost like 356 kilometers. So 5 kilometers every day religiously. But however, this time I was very cautious because I was pushing my extent, but I was very cautious in terms of doing the warm up and then run after run, stretching and then again protein intake and everything. So that was taken care, and I guess because of that only no injuries and nothing. But it was really an amazing feeling. But whenever we say that our body wouldn't take it, there is a possibility of injury. Possibility of injury is only there when you don't take care of what you are doing, right? So that is the one thing that I understood, that if you want to push yourself and take care of the necessary things that has to be done or taken care, you will be able to do it. That was another learning here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. So even as a beginner runner myself, I feel that I grew as a runner only when I was able to consistently, day on day, improve my running. And at that point of time, controlling injury risk was became really important, because if you're running every day, you're heightening your chances of an injury, and that's where your warming up and your precautions really come into play. So okay, so uh, I mean, parallel with your trekking and your running, your running, lifestyle. you have also started up. You created your own startup in 2015, Book My Interest, and you I mean you dive deep into this engagement and interest based community. So tell us about your entrepreneurship journey and your thoughts on entrepreneurship as well. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah, before I say that, I want to say something about fitness. So whenever people say that, fitness and how you keep yourself fit and what is the actual definition of being fit and everything. So I tell them it is not about how you look. It is about how you can actually deploy yourself when doing something, right? When I say doing something, it is like if you are able to wake up tomorrow morning and you feel like you can able to run 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, whatever is there in your capacity, you should be able to do it. If you want to go for a hike this weekend, you shouldn't be thinking that am I fit, will I be able to do it? That thing shouldn't come. And also, most of the people actually define fitness by the way they look. It actually is a very, very wrong scale to actually define fitness, because you see they're all always amazed by these actors or sporting people, because they actually do it on a daily basis with a discipline and consistency, right? And that is not possible for amateurs or common people like us. That we need to understand, and this has to be communicated. So whenever I talk to people and I tell them the same thing, it is not about how you look. You forget that at all. Like, even if you have a paunch, even if you have a beer belly, and even if you don't have that muscle definitions, that is absolutely fine. If you are able to do the normal things that you are supposed to do and keep yourself fit enough, that is good to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, one of the very important lessons in these times is that, cardiovascular fitness is the single biggest source of immunity. And it doesn't have to
Right.
do with your BMI index. You can be overweight, but you can be really very fit. And what is important is that you're fit, and therefore your immunity system is strong enough to help you cope through through these particularly difficult times that we are facing. So, yeah,
Right.
totally agree. So yeah, over to your entrepreneurship journey, book my interest, and yeah.
So yeah, whenever people talk about entrepreneur and entrepreneurship, I feel it is a overrated or a fancy terminology. I feel.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm actually not amazed by that word, but I'll tell you why. Because I come from a very humble background, a commoner, I can say. So I have felt myself that my entire duration of childhood, while growing up and also joining a first company in my career and everything. So what I've understood, every other time, whenever there was a problem, right, we've always looked out for a solution. We were always hustlers. Like
Yeah.
every other person, he's an hustler, right? He always looks out for a solution for
Right.
whatever problem he has, right? And the second point is, he is always happy with that solution at that particular point of time, and is content with it. And he always, whether it is family or his friends, he shares these kind of solutions that he's found out, and he keeps them also happy, and is happy with them. And the third most important thing is each and everyone is aspiring in their life. They look forward to what they can actually achieve, what they can do or accomplish more in their future. So these three things are all there in each and every common person, which is a very, very important and defining kind of an element if you put it in business terminologies for an entrepreneur. However, having said that, why 90 or 95% of these commoners don't become an entrepreneur is, again, based on three particular reasons that I have observed in my life. One is being complacent, right? So whatever you have in your life, you're happy with it. So you're like very complacent with and comfortable with whatever you have. And because of that, you don't take any kind of risk. So the point of taking risk and trying to do and experiment something in your life is very less. And with this, you do not have the conviction to convince yourself and convince your peers or family that something can be done beyond our capacity. So with this, what happens is, as I said, 90 to 95% of them never actually try to become entrepreneurs. Whoever actually breaks this kind of complacency, your risk-taking capability, and then have that conviction within themselves, they move on to become entrepreneurs. So this is what I've observed, and this is what I've experienced as well. So coming back to book my interest, it was the same thing. So I wanted to learn swimming, and I searched everywhere on the on the web. Where is the place or where is the training institute that I can join. I couldn't find it. Just there through some options and no, but they were like totally outdated. And then I searched the same thing for. I went to Google Analytics and got down all the possible interests and hobbies that is being searched on the web, and I searched for each and everything. There were very few options again on Just There, but other than Just There, there was not a single place where you can actually look out for it. So that is when, and that was the same time where I completed my program from IML. So I thought it is time to, whatever I have learned, let me actually utilize it and, explore it. So that is when I got into it, and I created a community for interest and hobbies. So this was a hyperlocal marketplace which had all the institutes and hobby centers with their training timing, schedules, trainers, what are the possible training activities that they do, uh, along with the pricing and everything. So it was a simple one-stop shop for all the possible interest and hobbies in Bangalore. So within 3 months, I was able to get almost 1,600 vendors within Bangalore. I took the help of again marketing interns again with low cost because I didn't have a lot of budget in my head, to do all this fancy marketing. So that is how I did it. And also my first marketing and the launch activity was TCS 10K Marathon in Bangalore. So I called up all my friends, all my running friends. I gave them this Bookminders t-shirt and I made them run. So basically, again, that was a launch I had to do. How I can do it with such a big crowd, 35,000 people running a marathon. If like 50 people are wearing t-shirts and running, you would actually get notified, right? So that is how I did. So this was the initiation of me being an entrepreneur, and I started Bookminders. And after 1 year, it got acquired by a company called Zotode. And I joined that company as a business head for channel sales. And that is where I met my partner, Mahendra Rathod. He's from IMB. So that is where I met him. And he's my, right now, the existing partner for Trek Nomad. So he is also a trekking enthusiast, and that is where we got to know each other. And so when he actually gave me an idea of creating a community for trekking, I was the first one to say no, because it was flooded with, if you go to Facebook, if you go to website, like web, everywhere there are like people who wants to take you for a trek. Like, lot of people. So I said, I clearly said no. Then he got me into that conviction. Basically, he had that conviction and he convinced me why we had that niche that we had to create, and why I should take him as a customer and then see. So we both went alone, like both of us went alone for few of the treks, and he was my customer, and I was taking him for a trek.
Okay.
So basically, Trek Nomad is premium, all-inclusive, end-to-end, experience provider with safety, quality, and responsible tourism as a main focus. So this is what we do, and this is for people who are like actually, in a position where they will spend that extra money, but they want to experience the best. So they want the end-to-end service to be taken care of. So if they're stepping out of the house and till they come back to the house, everything has to be taken care of. It's kind of a premium activity that we do, and we've been doing good in that front. So 2 years, we did the POC for the same. We did more than 100 odd treks, and we took almost 2,000 plus nomads. We call nomads as our customers as nomads. So that was the right thing that we did, and with that success, I thought this was the time to go ahead and make it official. So last year, I quit my job and I started this full time. And before I started this full time, I was very particular that I complete my basic mountaineering course. So that I have, even though the experience is there, but technical knowledge always helps.
Yeah.
And also, it was for my personal thing as well. So I completed it, and then I started the company officially. And with that, we also got recognized by Startup India and Startup Karnataka. And we got incubated by one of the incubators from Startup Karnataka, and it's going good.
Yeah, so what is fascinating is that as a trekking service provider, you are very much embedded into local communities. You get to know the people who support treks, the ground staff, And to help them, you have also partnered with various public institutions for the social initiatives such as for the Namami Gange project. So tell us about the social initiative that you've taken.
So there are like main three social initiatives that we actually took up. Starting from 2018, as you know, there was a lot of floods that happened both in Karnataka and Kerala. Karnataka, especially the Coorg district, which we say Kodagu in Kannada. So there were a lot of issues there, especially with the local community or the base camp villages that we used to go and stay and everything. So what we did was, especially, we created a campaign called Mission Rebuild Kodagu. As you know, the entire media, all the NGOs, everyone were there during the floods, and the first week after the flood happened. But actually, nobody went there after that. Like it was like very difficult for these people. They got assistance for almost 1 week to 2 weeks after the floods, but after that, there was no one to actually take care of them. So what we did was, we quickly created a campaign around it, and we took a crowdsourcing from all our nomads, from all our customers, and also people who had been associated with us, and people who are like following us, and we collected 2+ lakhs money, and me and Mahendra, we both went personally, identified each and every family which had lost their home, lost their house, lost their property and everything, and we made sure that we gave them money in their hand for their livelihood for the next 3 months, which was very much needed at that particular point of time, because at that point of time their livelihood was in a mess. See, I'm talking about, these are the guys who had like acres of land, right? And these guys are not from like small background also. They were totally dependent on the farming lands they had, and they had their own small house. Not rich, but they were self-sufficient. What happened was, all of a sudden they lost everything, and they didn't know what to do. So we had to help them, and that is how we helped them. And there was a residential school nearby also, which had taken 200+ kids of these kind of families, and to give them stay, food, and also education. So we gave some donation to that particular school as well, so that few months we provided food to those kids. And we also made sure that we gave money to few doctors in those localities, so that these people, whenever they go to visit these doctors, they are treated for free. So these are the multiple steps we took in this particular campaign. This was the very first campaign that we started. Okay. And the second campaign was Ganga Yamuna Mahotsav, which happened in Varanasi this year. So this was a part of Territorial Army's Ecological Task Force. As you know, Ecological Task Force is very active in taking care of these kind of activities. And this was particularly about Operation Ganga, where they had taken up to clean the entire Ganga river. So with this particular association, they wanted someone who could take care of planting their seed balls to counter afforestation and deforestation. So one of my mentors, who is also a Shaurya Chakra awardee, and he's the first bureaucrat who was awarded Shaurya Chakra. So his name is Major Pradeep Shaurya Arya. He is also IRS Additional Commissioner, Mumbai, and he is a major in Territorial Army. So he actually connected with me, and we talked about this, and I said, I'd be more than glad to be a part of this, and I want to be a part of this. So he gave me an opportunity to be a part of this. So one thing was, we have a large community based in multiple cities. So these are the people, who would help us to cater into counter the afforestation. And we are the best guys to take care of deforestation, because wherever we go, it is the forest, and we know those places where the forest and the tree patches are very less. So whenever we used to go into trekking, we used to plant these seed balls and make sure that it is planted in the proper place, not just thrown away here and there. So on those two fronts, we were a part of it, and we are still a part of it, and it's a long way to go. And I guess this will continue for many more years. So this is about the Ganga Yamuna Mahotsav, which was in association with Territorial Army's Ecological Task Force. And the latest campaign, and a very close to my heart as well, is Nomads Against Corona. So yeah, as the name says, we are actually trying to counter Corona's COVID pandemic situation effect that has affected our local community, both in Western Ghats and the Himalayas. Especially people in the Himalayas, these guys are dependent on tourism and the trekking community for their employment. And as you know, these people get employment only for 6 to 7 months in a year. And their major revenue stream or the major revenue season, that is the March, April, and May, it is totally washed out. And they do not have any kind of employment source there and also income source. So what we did was, we created this particular campaign in two levels. One was direct donation, which actually takes care of their present situation. Like they do not have any income right now. They wouldn't have any source to buy groceries or ration kits or anything like that. So we wanted to cater to their present situation. So that was through donation. And the second level was through trek vouchers. So we created trek vouchers for our customers and for our nomads. So what they would do is, they had actually planned for certain travel or for certain trek, maybe from March, April, May. They had saved up money, but they couldn't go. But they can buy these trek vouchers at a nominal price, and of course, in that particular trek voucher also, a certain amount will go to the community. But what happens here is when our customers or the nomads buy these trek vouchers, it will make an assurance of future business to this local community. So whenever these guys buy trek vouchers, it makes sure that whenever there is a relaxation that is going to come into the picture, and these guys go for trekking, it will assure them a future business. So we took care of their present situation as well as their future demand as well. So in these lines, we have made sure that they have employment for the next 6 months or so, and we are still continuing this campaign, and hopefully we will be able to cater to more and more families. Right now, we have catered to around 8 to 10 families. We will go and expand it to as many families as possible.
So a question from our viewers is, how do you see the post-COVID? How do you see trekking in the post-COVID world? I mean, currently we are seeing how it's impacting right now, but what are the longer-term effects that COVID will have on trekking itself?
As I told you, the trekking community has evolved, right? As I told you, from normal camping to tent camping to now homestays to resorts. Now what will happen is the usual camping kind of a scenario, it will be out of the scene for some days, because the question and the point of hygiene is very difficult in maintaining the same thing in camping routes. So there will be more routes, which will have a lot of hotels or homestays or resorts kind of a routes. These kind of things will open up more, and people will opt for more of a comfortable kind of a trekking rather than hardcore trekking. So that will be a changeover that we will see. And also for the next 6 months, what I see is, trekking will not take place as it used to happen in a normal day. People who are the first goers, they would be the persons, who will be the flag bearers, because once they go and start putting up posts or photos and anything, the rest of the people will follow. Because right now, even the local treks have been opened up in Karnataka. Okay. So everyone is interested, but no one is taking up that bold step to come and join us. So that is what we saw. So next weekend, what we are thinking is, we will go ourselves, do some live videos or photos from there and show them how we are taking care of the social distancing or anything like that, which is to be required and implemented in the trekking routes and the base camps. So base camps, when I say, is it can be a homestay or a resort as well. So basically, people want that confidence and see how it is going to work, and then they will start coming in. And even if they start coming in, it will be a changeover that people will look out for slightly costlier also, but they will look out for a comfortable, safe, and hygiene places. So there is going to be a change in the trekking community for the next 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely agree about the importance of safety that people are now prioritizing. So tell us about your 7 summits of Alemari project. I mean, unfortunately, it was disturbed by the COVID scenario, but you've already climbed Kilimanjaro and you want to climb the top 7 summits across all continents. So tell us about this project.
So as you be in the trekking community, there are a lot of questions that, many people used to ask me why you are not attempting it, why you don't want to climb Everest. I always used to say, see, there are like two different things in hand. Like, one is the, that you aspire, and one is like, like the impossible thing that to achieve. Because I knew being in the trekking community, I knew it is not easy. One thing is from the commercial point of view, it is like beyond our imagination, right? And getting all the sponsors, everyone in place, it is very difficult. So this was a study again for 1 year on like, how am I supposed to do it? How am I going to do it? And everything. And it took almost 1 year for me to convince myself and then say, let me give it a try. See, ultimately, what is going to happen? Anyways, if it is not possible, you're not able to do it. But if there's slight possible chance that you can do it, then that is a very good thing, right? So I started, let me do it. And for my very first summit only, I got 2-3 good sponsors, and that is very great for them. Great of them that they were able to push me and help me as well. So I was able to successfully do Kilimanjaro in 2019 October. And I would like to show you, what is my aspiration of doing it, why I want to do it, and what is the theme with which I am trying to do this 7 summit.
Sure.
Share my screen.
Yeah. I'm just configuring on my. I'll also have to configure on my system. That will take just a minute. The green screen.
So you want to see the 7 summits deck, or you want to see some Western Ghats photos?
Yeah, whichever you prefer. Actually, yeah, we can just sort of go quickly through the Western Ghats photo if that. Some of the photos of the treks themselves. Then we can just switch to the 7 summits deck. Right? Works.
Yeah.
Right. Just let me know when you've started your screen share.
Yeah, I've started.
Yeah. Just a minute. I will add it to. Just a minute. Shared screen. Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, good.
So yeah, this is way back in 2006 or 7, I guess.
Okay.
So this is how we used to carry, like sleeping bags and like the small backpacks. Actually there was no trekking bag or anything like that.
Okay.
So this is how we used to carry, and this is the stove that we used to carry, camphor stove. Earlier it used to come in a funnel kind of a thing like this, and we used to actually put in rocks for the support while it is boiling or cooking.
Got it.
And the best part of trekking, a decade ago was, we used to counter a lot of wild animals and, bones and everything like that. But right now, the trails are so predominant, and the forest officials often go there because of the poaching and illegal activities. Now you usually don't find any kind of wild animals in the route.
Okay.
And as I told you, this is how we used to find a high ground, maybe below a tree, or below a temple or school or nearby school. That is where we used to camp and just carry these mats and everything. This used to be where we used to halt for the day.
Got it.
Then again, this used to be kind of a kitchen where we used to put 2-3 camphor stoves and cook for ourselves for the day.
Got it.
And this is the, again, revolution from the camphor stove that I showed you. Now this is the most used camphor stove because it has an inbuilt stand as well. So,
okay. Got it.
So you can actually put a good size vessel there and actually cook it. And if you can see this also, there is a ready to cook MTR things as well. So this is now again predominantly used by trekkers.
Okay, got it.
Actually, MTR is also one of my 7 summit sponsors.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing.
Little did I knew then, but yeah, right now they.
Okay.
So this is the famous Dudhsagar Falls.
Oh, nice.
So this is one of the places nearby Bangalore. This is called Kandagiri. So you find beautiful sunset views there because clouds. You will be like above the clouds, even though you are just like 1,200 meters in altitude.
Okay.
You will be like above the ground.
Right. That's a totally surreal feeling of being above the clouds. I mean, I've been above the clouds. I think near to Rohtang Pass in Manali. I mean, that
Yeah,
is my experience. But it's always so surreal. I mean, you feel all the mist amidst you. It's not raining, but you're still getting wet. So I know it's a surreal feeling. Absolutely.
yeah. But just imagine this is just 60 kilometers away from Bangalore. You're just like
Okay.
2 hours away from it.
Amazing. Amazing stuff.
Again, this is how we used to carry. Again, the beauty of Western Ghats is the waterfalls, like multiple waterfalls, and especially this season, each and every trekking trail becomes a route for waterfalls.
Amazing. Amazing.
So if you see, like even for 2 day treks, we used to carry such heavy luggage because everything is on our own, including food, everything, like your camping equipments, everything, rope. But right now, I'll show photos like you actually carry only a water bottle and snacks because any which is you're going back to your base camp
Right.
where you're going to stay for the night. So yeah,
Got it. Yeah, I mean your rucksack. I mean serves so many functions. I mean being a pillow and as a rest point is one of them. Yeah, totally
this
agree.
was actually like we were descending down. I was like taking a short nap and now somebody has clicked this photo and this has actually become one of my favorite photos. And as told you, this is the second phase of trekking where like we used to just touch tarpaulin 15 by 15 tarpaulin sheet over that pillows, and I'm here looking out for leeches.
But,
Like every 2 3 hours we used to change people for guard like looking out for leeches if bear doesn't come nearby.
okay, okay. I mean you're
All the
sleeping in
food.
the open. You're sleeping in the open here.
Yeah, yeah. This was
Okay,
the first phase I was talking about, like before camping equipment came into usage.
got it. Okay. I mean that's amazing. I mean this is something that you cannot possibly do in the Himalayas. You
You,
know,
you,
because
you can never do. See, even in Western Ghats right now, you cannot do this. We've all done all these things. And this is where even the lightning strikes and everything happened.
got it.
Because, see, lightning strikes doesn't bother these kind of sleeping scenario. It used to bother for camping because camping had a lot of iron rods, right?
Got it. Got it.
Steel rods or aluminum rods. So that used to attract. So that is why there was a lot of problem, and then they stopped the camping in the peak. This is actually on a peak at 1,800 altitude.
Got it. Got it. Amazing.
And again, whenever on the route, if you want to have some snacks, ready to go with our camper stuff.
Amazing.
These are the things which will not be possible or you will not see anywhere in the Western Ghats Trek right now.
Beautiful.
And this is also one of the things. This is actually the Dudh Sagar Falls, the tip.
Got it. Dude, this is in Goa? That's
Yeah, the Dudh Sagar Falls. Actually,
right.
nobody would have explored this particular area,
Yeah.
and it is not allowed also right now because there is a village called
Right.
Kuveshi, which is the border of Karnataka and Goa.
Got
And
it.
those people, I went there almost like multiple times, convinced them, and then they took us here. But right now, if you go, I don't think they will even allow you there. But this is one of the most iconic moments. At the same moment, even the train came. It was nice.
Yeah, I mean, most of the photos that I've seen are from the bottom of the waterfall, and here you seem to be on the top of the waterfall.
Yeah, that's why I took this photo saying that nobody would have seen this actually.
Yeah, totally agree. This is absolutely amazing. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if you can now,
I'm showing the same thing that I was sitting there exactly.
okay, okay, that's so amazing. Yeah, yeah. If you can show us the seven summits of Alimari Tech now.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
This was my first Everest base camp trip. And of course, this is the mighty Everest from Kalapathar.
Got it. Got it.
So this is one of the most beautiful range in Western Ghats. This is called Kudre Mukha,
Right,
which
right,
means
right.
horse face. So I'll quickly get into the Seven Summits thing.
Yeah.
So my Seven Summits project, I've named it as Project Seven Summits by the Alemari. So Alemari in Kannada means nomad.
Got it.
So basically, the motto that I took up for the Seven Summits achievement was to promote, protect, and conserve the Western Ghats. As you know, Western Ghats is one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and also it is the one of the 8 biodiversity hotspots in the world. Very few people know about this, but this is the beauty of Western Ghats, and most of them know, but I still want to iterate that Western Ghats is older than the Himalayas.
Yeah.
So basically, what I want to do with this activity is that I want to bring in economic development. Basically, what happens is if you see tourism as per se across the world, it is very predominant around forest, right? However, India being having such beautiful forest range, we do not actually promote it for tourism. Why? Because it is not properly maintained, especially with the help of locals. So what I want to do is bring in a change with the help of locals. I want to bring in that economic development in those areas. So why we have to promote is again, as I told you, the history of Western Ghats, that it is older than Himalayas. That we have to make sure that it is preserved, protected, and then actually promoted as well. And also the flora and fauna that is found here. Even recently there was a species of frog and a lizard that was found out in Western Ghats. So you don't even know the capacity, what is the biodiversity that we have in terms of flora and fauna as well. So I want to do it in terms of bringing in more tourism into this particular area, and with that tourism, what happens is it brings out an employment to the local community and also enables them being in local entrepreneurs for themselves. And with that influx of tourism, we can actually protect this entire forest range and environment by inculcating certain activities and certain operational activities from the government of India and government of Karnataka in particular say of Western Ghats that I'm speaking about, and also conserve in terms of poaching and also deforestation and other things that can be controlled with the help of again the local community. So I want to do it to bringing in an awareness and collaborating with both the NGOs and the government and the local community and creating a volunteer base in terms of whenever there is a mishaps, right, like forest fire or anything like that, you have to be ready with a volunteer base who can get into action quickly and make sure whoever goes into this kind of area for trekking, they follow responsible trekking in terms of whatever trash they take in it, they bring it back. And finally, empowering the local people because they know that particular terrain very well. Because even though you know about that particular terrain, you cannot be an expert unless you are from that particular area.
Yeah, I completely was it. I mean, just bringing my own thoughts. I mean, when we trek, we just go there and we come back. And I mean, we take in so many experiences, so many learnings, so much enjoyment from those mountains. It's just as important for us to give back to those mountains, whether it is volunteering in the times when they really need us. Or, I mean, so these are fantastic initiatives that you're taking to support those communities that, that help us for our own recreation. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was also, last year, I completed Mount Kilimanjaro. So these are the photos along with my sponsors and everything.
Okay.
And this is a simple thing about what we do as trek nomads.
Got it. So yeah, I mean, would you like to talk about your own plans of the 7 summits? I mean, how you're training for all the different summits across the continents? Yeah.
So
right.
basically, this was my plan as I'm showing you on my screen. So this was my plan. And so basically what happens is each and every summit here has a different challenge altogether. Right. Like Kilimanjaro has an entirely different weather related problem, which is the easiest kind of in the entire 7 summits. But when I was summiting that particular day, there was a heavy snowfall and high winds, both together.
Got it.
So for me, from the base camp to the summit, for 6-7 kilometers, it almost took 7 to 8 hours for me,
Got it. Got it.
even with my fitness. So it is a challenge that you actually learn from each and everything. So Elbrus being the most coldest actually, within that particular altitude. So I was preparing for the same by going to multiple, cold terrain treks in December and January. In January, I was there in Leh for the Chadar trek. So where the temperature even went to almost minus 30, 35. So I was preparing myself in those lines, and I was supposed to do Elbrus this June. Basically, I was supposed to leave by last week for this particular summit, but unluckily, that couldn't happen. But maybe this will be moved to next year. But I have still not planned for Aconcagua because it was totally dependent on how I actually do the Elbrus summit, and based on that, I thought of planning it. So right now it is on halt. That's all I can say. But my preparation is still going on because I need to keep myself, and my mindset prepared for it. Because whenever it opens, I should have a particular plan in my head to actually take this forward.
Yeah, I mean, 7 summits is an absolutely challenging process, and ultimately the pinnacle of that stage is climbing Mount Everest. And we've had a lot of within the Passion Talks forum, we've had a lot of summiteers, a lot of people who climb Mount Everest or have attempted Mount Everest and come back. I mean, making the right decision. So a lot of
Right.
risk that these mountains bring. And yeah, wishing you all the very best with this journey.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, so just a request to all the viewers to just consider Naveen's campaign of Nomads Against Corona. Support that if you can. You can purchase vouchers for Trek Nomads for future treks, and the purchases that you make now, I mean, you can redeem later, but they are helping the community, the trekking, the ground staff in the local communities right now. So that is fantastic work that Naveen is doing. Fantastic, Naveen. It was absolutely wonderful having you. A lot of learnings for me personally. I mean, myself being a very beginner runner and a very beginner sort of a trekking enthusiast. Talking to you was a fantastic learning experience. So yeah, thank you so much.
I still consider myself as a beginner, Milan. So that is always good. It's just that you'll always be grounded, and you'll get to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely agree. All right. Yes. Again, apologies about the technical issues that we had. This is a new setup that we've used for the very first time. I mean, broadcasting to YouTube. So I hope that the quality of the stream itself is going to be good. So
hopefully.
But yeah, again, fantastic learning opportunity from you, Naveen. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Milan, and thanks to Rommel as well. So,
yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity. Hope I was helpful in a way.
It was absolutely amazing. All right.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.